Hello, Chief reporting for chat. Last week I talked about all the ranges I went to, or the weapons I at least fired on all those ranges. Today I'm going to do kind of a recap of all the field exercises I did. As I said in S3 shop, I was going to the field once a month. Rain, sleet, snow, even tornado one time, tornado watch we had to go sit through one time. That was hilarious. I'll get to that story in another video because it involves a story I'm putting off for a while. Went to the field with a different lieutenant in the shop, and it snowed overnight. So the next day he got a call from the commander, and he had to greet the commander when he came out to the field, so he got a verbal counseling. Due to the snowfall, his wife had called in. She's former military. I'm not going to reveal what service she was in. But she asked, is my husband coming in out of the field because it snowed overnight? Well, she was probably basically told that we train all seasons. And one of my first exercises when I was in the S3 shop, we drove the 577 to our location. Master Sergeant Tinsley picked out a spot for us to set up. Somebody came along and said, nah, move it forward. So we moved it forward about 5-10 feet. As soon as they got it into that location, bam, the engine popped and died. And we are partly on a slope. We were nose in, and that's where the hatch is to get to the engine. So we spent the rest of the exercise waiting for the mechanics to come out, take out the old engine, and then come back and put in a new engine. And they got the new engine in and up and running like about 30 minutes before the exercise was called. And we were able to go home. So we were able to go home on time. I did a couple exercises in Charlie Company. One of them was sitting in a command Humvee. We had taken all our equipment out to the field, and the company commander decided that, we've done enough training, but we had reserved the range for one more day, so therefore you had to call in, because if you reserved the range, you're supposed to use the allowed amount of time that you want to use the range. So First Sergeant left me out there in a command vehicle, command Humvee. So there was 4 soldiers. He left me 3 soldiers. Why he left me 3 instead of like 2 of us? We didn't need 4. So we had to sit there until after midnight so we could call into range control and then say, yes, we're done with the range, but at least we called in on the allotted day, even though it was only like 2 minutes after midnight. Then we were able to come home. It was a hot summer night, I remember, because we fought mosquitoes. And we did not have enough handkerchiefs, extra t-shirts, or anything to stuff in wherever those mosquitoes can get into, because anybody knows a Humvee, or at least the old style with all that canvas and the vinyl doors and tops, you couldn't seal it fully like you can now, because now they're fully sealed because of the IEDs. Iraq taught us that soft-skinned vehicles aren't very good against IEDs for some reason. So that was fun. And then after we got back from Desert Shield, Desert Storm, we also set up one time a battalion talk, a military intelligence battalion talk. Never did that, only did it once in my entire career. And that was there, and I think it was basically for the battalion commander to see how good his equipment was after we got back from the desert, to see if he needed to replace anything. I think that's all it was. It was just a dog and pony show, as we call them. We just set it up for someone to come through and look at it. Well, we got done setting it up, and it was also one of the only time I was out in the field in the same place as my wife, because she was in a different company always. And they came through the battalion talk and said, if you're not a section leader, if you're not a section sergeant, if you're not a squad leader, if you're not a sergeant first class and above, remove yourself from the talk, find a place to go, and we'll call you back. So we walked down the road, me and my wife did, because neither one of us was allowed to remain in the battalion talk because we were not of sufficient rank or position. And we walked down the road along with all the rest of the soldiers. We went to where all the Humvees and the cargo Humvees were parked, all the excess equipment that we didn't need down at the battalion talk. And it seemed like it was only like 15, 20, maybe 25 minutes later, this specialist from my company came bebopping down the road, so to speak, calling out to me, "Sergeant, Sergeant." And I'm like, "Yes." He says, "They need you." I said, "Who needs me?" He says, "Well, we've been trying to hunt for you." And I says, "I'm here in plain sight along with the rest of the soldiers." "What do you mean you can't?" He basically said they couldn't find me. But I was here with the rest of the soldiers that had to vacate the battalion talk. But for some reason, even in the front group, they couldn't find me. And I was also informed that I was in trouble. So I went back and reported to my squad leader, the same squad leader who has said, "You realize you have more points than I do and you haven't been to the board yet." Yeah, her. And she basically said that, "We've been looking for you." And I said, "Well, I was down there with the rest of the troops. What do you mean you couldn't? And we couldn't find you." And I was like, okay, story time for somebody else. I don't know, but got a little verbal counseling. You know, when we tell you to disappear, you got to remain in sight. And I'm like, I was down there with the rest of the troops. I don't know why you couldn't find me. So that was fun. And a few other occasions. One time I went out with my favorite captain while I was in the S3 shop. Have two stories with him. It could have been the same exercise, but it was a hot summer day, and I wore pantyhose because chiggers, the nice little bugs that like to leave little red welts all over your body. I was told they can't penetrate pantyhose very well, so I wore those. But pantyhose got rather hot underneath my uniform because I was sitting in the hot sun while he was... Because we went to one location where he had the ground guide me to park while he went to a temporary talk. They set up a couple tents and had a table where they showed the main map, and then all the elements moved forward to the next location. It's the only time we ever moved at night, or we reported to a place at night. It was the only time. It was the only time I ever saw as you see in all the war movies, they always drawn in the dirt. They did a sand table in the dirt before they broke up, and basically you had all the OICs of all the sections still there, while the rest of their sections went forward to set up the talk in some trees. So we get done with that. It's getting dusk, and by the time we get over to the other location, my captain, he's like, "I don't see nothing." And I said, "What are you talking about, sir?" He said, "We should be on top of this place." He says, I'm looking at the map, and he says, and he was looking at the map, and this is before GPS. And I said, "Wait a minute, sir," because we've got a noisy Humvee engine. Turn the vehicle off, and he's like, "What are you doing that for?" And as soon as we turned the vehicle off and he asked that question, we could hear the generators to the right of us and in the woods. And he says, "Oh, I didn't think of that." So I turned the engine back on. We drove over there. He went back inside and found out where he would be so he could figure out where we would set up. And it was the only time I set up camouflage in the dark and the radio. Yeah, I had to set everything up like normal. And when we woke up the next morning, because we wore PT uniform for sleeping gear out in the field because it was too hot to wear anything else. I mean, and you could just see the chiggers all up and down his legs from the previous day when he got bitten by them ground guiding me into that previous temporary talk. That was about the only time we ever moved talk. We went to one location, as I said. They did a temporary setup, and then they tore it down and moved on and drew in the dirt. Never saw that ever again. So that's it about for range, or not ranges, but for little oddball stories of being out in the field setting up in various locations: winter, spring, summer, fall, rain, hail, sleet, snow. Oh yeah, talking about rain. One other time I went out with my favorite captain, and it was raining so bad, but we had an extra officer with us that time. So my captain opted to sleep outside during the rain, during the night. He gave his position inside the cargo Humvee to another captain. And I said, "Sir, I'll sleep outside." He says, "No, you're sleeping in." So he was okay because he put his poncho over him and over him in the sleeping bag. He said he was okay until he rolled over, and there's the hole where you put your neck through. You can't tie that off. So he had accumulated a bunch of water in wherever he made a hollow where his hood was. Excuse me. So he made a hollow or a lake of water. So when he rolled in the middle of the night, that's when all that water gushed in and soaked him in soaked the immediate area and him with all that water in his sleeping bag. And he was so miserable the next morning. He was cussing mad because he hung his the old sleeping bag, the one we called the fart sack. He had to hang it up in the back of the Humvee, and it hardly dried throughout the day because it was just a miserable day. So he had a wet sleeping bag to sleep in that night. So that's it for going out into the field at Fort Riley, Kansas. Oh wait, one last one. I missed my last exercise because Fort Riley Hospital, can't think of its name right now, they set up a MASH tent, the last MASH tent for this hospital. And my wife got a procedure done inside the MASH tent. They did a bunch of operations that day. So we were out there all day. They didn't release her until almost retreat, which is about 5:30. And so we went home that night. She was feeling miserable, and I got a call right after I almost got home, and on the other end of the line was my new squad leader, Scott. I could recognize his voice, and he says, "Hey, I need 2 pepperoni pizzas." And I'm like, "Scott, aren't you supposed to be out?" "I'm out in the field. First sergeant says don't worry about coming out to the field. Take care of your wife. We'll see you on Monday," or something like that. I can't remember what day he said. Yeah, because it was Monday. He says, "Take care of her. We'll see you Monday." So I got out of my last exercise late November, because I was leaving Fort Riley January. So I got out of my last exercise, and it was a miserable exercise from what I understand. So this is Chief signing out. Remember, freedom's not free. Veterans pay the price. So hug a veteran, thank a veteran, kiss a veteran. If you're married to one or married to each other as a veteran, do so. Chief out.